بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين أرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء وعجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا وإياكم من أنصاره وأعوانه والذابين والمستشهدين بين يديه بإذن الله تعالى. أما بعد, respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I sincerely welcome you all to our second part in our series where we look into the gems and pearls of wisdom from the lives of the imams of Ahlulbayt salawatullahi alayhim ajma'in. Imam Hassan alayhi salam is an outstanding figure in not only Islamic history but also world history in general. Imam al-Mujtaba is known as the one chosen by the Almighty. Al-Mujtaba, ijtabahu Allah. Allah selected him. Now, of course, this is his title. He is the first to make the Holy Prophet and Messenger a grandfather. He is the first to make Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Zahra parents. He occupies a very valuable role in the lives of the Messenger of God and God's emissaries and chosen people. That being said, he is also widely misunderstood. I remember probably 2 years ago, we did a series here in this wonderful center known as Al-Layali Al-Hasaniyya, the Hassani nights, whereby we looked at 10 individual nights. These would correspond with the 10th of the 7th of Safar, the 10th night being the day of the Shahada of Imam Hassan, mimicking the theme that we would do with Ashura, because the life and legacy of Imam al-Mujtaba, the effort was to showcase that there is so much to learn. We've done him an injustice. We have not taken advantage of the many valuable lessons that can be extrapolated from the life of this amazing figure. So, can one perform 10 lectures? By the time we got to the 10th, I remember, subhanAllah, there was still like 20 more in the tank that I personally wanted to get out. 20 more individual nights, 20 more independent topics that span an hour long, and that's from the relative amount of humble research that I've done, and I know for a fact much more is possible. There is much more potential. You're talking an Imam that lived, born in the 15th of the holy month of Ramadan, the 3rd year after Hijrah, died the 50th year of Hijrah on the 7th of Safar. This is a person who lived a life filled with so many moments, interactions. This is your number 2 Imam. This is the bridge between Sayyidah Zahra, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Rasulullah to the rest of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Very integral, very necessary, very part and parcel of the life of every Muslim lover of Ahlul Bayt today. Unfortunately, 3/4 of the Muslim world, to them, Imam Hassan has not grown past 7 years old. He's still this little kid that, mashallah, cute. He played with the Prophet, he was young, he was small, and that's it. Because the rest of the life of Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, many of his accomplishments, and many of his feats are in conflict with the opposition that we do not revere. The likes such as Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, the likes such as the estranged wife of the Holy Prophet in the Battle of Jamal. There is a conflict there. Many moments in Islamic history showcase that once Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, even from the young age of around 12 years old, runs into conflict with the figures that are members of the establishment that usurp the rights of the Ahlul Bayt. Therefore, to not highlight these moments in Islamic history, emphasize he was a young boy, and that's as if he never grew past 7 years old. Whereas Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, many valuable lessons can be learned from his sacrifice, with the mentioning of the truce, peace agreement, treaty, the moments where he actually engages in conflict, contrary to the opinion that many might level at him that he was apolitical or non-confrontational. Rather, the life of the Imam, while very challenging to showcase in an hour-long discussion, however, let us put some effort to gain some knowledge, to learn about the Imam alayhi salam, so that we can understand and appreciate a little bit more, even if we're scratching the surface, from Hujjatullah al-Mujtaba Kareem Ahlulbayt al-Imam Hassan salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Imam Hassan alayhi salam was known as Kareem Ahlulbayt. Understanding that already sets the tone for what we're going to do. Kareem means the one who is generous without you even needing to ask. You hear the terms al-Jawad, al-Kareem. Jawad can be referred to someone who, when you need him, he's always there for you. Karama, Karam, Kareem can refer to the one who, whether you go to him or not, he is a fountain constantly giving you. Imam al-Hassan is known as Kareem Ahlulbayt. This title highlights for us the vision that he occupies. And this vision is one where it peaked at such a degree he was willing to relinquish political leadership for the sake of the betterment of the ummah. That is a depth of generosity that many will never do. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, we notice just the display of some of his knowledge, some of his generosity. It was reported that he would be breaking bread, and in front of him was a dog. And this is, you're talking about the Imam Ma'soom, right? So you're dealing with a dog in front of him. He begins to break from the bread and hand him from that which he is also eating. Now, it's one thing to give the thing or the animal food for it. It's another thing to share what you're eating for this creature. And a man comes and says to him, this is something beneath you, Ibn Rasulullah. It's not befitting that you share, break bread with another animal, especially like a dog like this. To which he replies, Wallah, the most philanthropic, humanitarian, loving reply you'll ever see, subhanAllah. He said, Inni astahiyya an akula wa dhu ruhin yanziru ilay. I feel ashamed to eat and a soul is staring at me. He said a principle that it doesn't matter what is being, what is suffering, what is hungry, so long as it's a soul that's watching you, feed it. I am ashamed to eat while it's watching. So he breaks bread and gives it to him. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, one day a man constantly frequented his home, would ask for help financially, for food. And then the man felt a bit guilty that every time I go to him, he always gives me. Let me this time give him something in return. A poor person does not own much so that they can give gifts. So he thought, let me give him something abstract. Let me give him poetry. This will be a gift that is accepted, that is nice. Like, I wrote you poetry. And of course, back then, you didn't have the use of AI so that you can just generate it. You have to actually use your brain. Something many people stopped using ever since AI came into the scene. But work on writing some poetry. This will help you become creative. It'll help you word in things and expression. And so he's like, let me give him some poetry. It shows effort. Let me go to him. And before I even ask him for my desire, I'll give him poetry, then I'll say, give me something in return now. So he goes to the house. He knocks on the door. The first thing he observes is that he never sees the Imam's face. He always sees his hand. And it's as if, to him, Imam al-Mujtaba is just a hand. Why? It would be an effort from all members of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. This is a common motif, which has a lesson in it as well. That when they give, they don't want you to know they're the ones who gave. A lot of times, people like to be made known that they are those who donate. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being known for something charitable. It's actually a good thing. It's a lovely quality. That if you're going to be known for something, be known for something good. But don't make the good that you did for what? For the purpose of just being known for it. Did I say this story last time? That there was a person who was running for local office here. Did I say that story?
It was over there. But you could,
Where was it, man?
for Matthew's side.
Okay, so that wasn't here? This girl, she ran for city council. And I remember, we're part of the Imam Ali Association, which is a philanthropic group. We just give to, like, food baskets and like winter clothing to those who are homeless, right? And then suddenly she joins us, and I've never seen her, and I'm very happy, someone new. But the problem is, yalla, it's okay. She has a team recording her, like this. Big old, like, have you seen the TV camera crew with the big cameras on the shoulders? Those big ones that look like bazookas? Those ones. And she's like, watch. And she gives what's it called, the jacket, she puts it into the right box, she sorts the cans and whatever. See? Like, yeah, mashallah, that's no problem. That she ran for office and she lost, obviously. When she lost, she stopped showing up to the food drives. And she never showed up again. The problem with that there was no tawfiq if you're going to make your intention قربة إلى السمعة, قربة إلى reputation building, قربة not إلى الله عز وجل. I'm only interested, and she never showed up afterwards. The Ahlul Bayt stressed that, look, if you want jaza, it'll come naturally. Don't chase it. People will know that's you. At the end of the day, we're reading a hadith now where the imam would only show his hand. He would stand beside the wall behind the door and his hand would, but we now know it's Imam Hassan. Obviously, history will record that. You will be made aware. God will make it public to others. One of the best ways I read to become more appreciated around your society is to compliment others in the presence of other people. Say, do you know so-and-so is a very smart person? They have good taste in whatever. They have good akhlaq. That person is going to spread that rumor. Do you know that individual said this about you? And it becomes something where you didn't even need to confront. You didn't even need to put effort. You just throw the initial step and everything else works into place. You will then become more appreciated. That you're actually going out there doing inverse ghibah, inverse backbiting, where you're spreading good words about others behind their back. That news reaches them. Instead of going to the individual and saying, look, you know, I told so-and-so that mashallah, you're a good person. To me, that doesn't mean anything. I remember a friend told me, I went to a community to speak, that he said, Sayyidina, there were a few people, they were talking about you. And I said, hey, stop. That's my boy, that's my man, that's my friend, that's my brother. And you know, I defended you. Like the moment you said, I defended you, I'm like, what was the issue anyways? This is that they didn't like that you were an Iraqi talking to them. I'm like, is that just racist or something? I don't understand. Yeah, and I said, yeah, so what? You know, who cares? I mean, you just made it worse. Not only do I not like appreciate them anymore as much, I don't like the fact that you want to be praised now. Yeah, I defended you, huh? Didn't I stand up for you? It's like, wow, there are ways to do these things without seeking the praise. People will inform you eventually without being too direct that, hey, you have people that stand up for you. This doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you go to your own grave and the day of judgment, Allah judges. But don't seek validation. Ahlul Bayt put that effort. The man knocks on the door and he just sees a hand. That's it, just a hand. And he says, wait, before you give me that which is in the container or in the bag, he would routinely come, and so the Imam knows what he wants. He says, let me just give you some poetry. Imam says, take my sadaqah, then I'll accept your poetry. He's like, that's not how it works. I want to thank you for all the sadaqat you've done for me before, then I'll take it. He's like, nope, take the sadaqah first. So that it's not something you can think is a result of the poetry that you gifted me and I had to pay you. La, take the sadaqah first. He's very careful, very particular about the manner and step. That's their intention. So a man said, listen, can I give you the poetry or not? Imam Hassan said, not even now. I don't even want it. I know you worked hard, but the thing is, I don't even want it because you want to recite poetry to me to save face so you don't feel guilty. Now I'm going to make you feel guilty. And the Imam recited poetry to him. It's as if he says, I'll give you poetry. And he recites something so mesmerizing. It teaches you manners, theology, and the status of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt and their vision when it comes to dealing with other people. He says, نحن أناس نوالنا خضل. We are a people, we meaning the Ahlul Bayt. Attaining anything from us is easy. يرتع فيه الرجاء والأمل. That from us, hope and aspirations are with us. تجود قبل السؤال أنفسنا. Our nature is always giving before even the question to ask. We always will give. خوفا why عن ماء وجه من يسأل. Fearing for the dignity of the one who asks. They say, I will not let you ask me in order for me to give charity to you. Now you see why he's called Karim Ahlul Bayt. I will give you before you ask so that you won't even leave thinking, I had to beg a little. I was struggling. One of the most complicated moments in a believer's life is when they have to kind of beg. And there's no shame in being someone financially, I guess, humble challenged in these circumstances, the economy is not good. Sometimes you have to lean on others, but that's just a means. Some people make it the ends. Whenever I struggle, I could just go to this guy. No, you have to get out of that circumstance. There's a hadith by the Holy Messenger of God, to which he says, "Al-mu'minu al-qawi khayrun min al-mu'minu al-dha'if." Ulama come and say, the strong believer is better, more efficient than the weaker believer, is to mean physically and financially. How could you give back to society if you actually don't have enough to give back? It hurts your heart, it breaks your heart to see, for example, the crises happening. There are Shia who are suffering in Lebanon, there are Shia who are suffering in Iran, and there are just other everyday average human beings going through pain. There are some mu'mineen, they need to be physically strong to confront that oppression. But then the majority need to be financially strong to support the confrontation of that oppression. So how can I do that if I don't have some sort of independence financially? So the Imam makes it very clear that I give before you even ask, so you don't leave thinking I had to beg. لا لا, it's just a gift. تجود قبل السؤال أنفسنا خوفا عن ماء وجه من يسأل فلو علم البحر. And if the sea knew فضل نائلنا, the virtue of our generous nature, لفاض من بعد لغاض من بعد فيضه خجل, that it would humble and dry up out of shame in comparison and how it pales to the depth of our generosity. The man was astonished. He says, surely God knows where he places his message. And the Imam gifted him and he didn't even need to give him anything back in return. That's the Imam of Ahlulbayt. When you hear terms such as the most generous, طبعا it doesn't mean he is more outstanding than the other members of Ahlulbayt. But to each Imam, their individual role. All the Imams of Ahlulbayt in our aqaid and in our theology are all on the same pedigree as far as their relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal, with exception to the Holy Prophet of Islam. The Prophet is naturally the greatest creation of God Almighty. The second to that in our aqaid is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. From that is the other Imams of Ahlul Bayt. This is our aqidah. The Imams don't need to develop either. From the cradle to their grave, even before the cradle, they were ordained by the Almighty. Hence he's called Mujtaba. God chose him, assigned him. The Messenger of God says, when I went to heaven, I saw the throne of God. I saw written alongside it the 12 Imams from my lineage. He sees the name. These are names preordained before even the creation of the dunya. To us, they are all individually assigned their role. That doesn't mean because one had X role and the other one had a more, let's say, apparently more outstanding role, that means the importance or the significance of that Imam is more than the other. Each one dealt with their own circumstances. And if Imam Hassan alayhi salam was in the same situation and position and seat as Imam Hussain, he would have done the same exact thing. And if Imam Hussain was in the same position as Imam Hassan, he would have done the same exact thing. The Prophet of Islam said, Ahlul Bayt kulluhum nurun wahid. They are all one light source. One light. One light, one radiance. Yes, there is some cases, emphasis based on our real world relative circumstances. We can't but sympathize and relate to Imam al-Hussein because we see versions of Karbala today. We see versions of Yazid today. Versions. I can't help but remember Abdullah al-Asghar, al-Radi' when I see kids being slaughtered. Don't let people come and tell you this talk of there is nothing like Karbala, you can't compare. Akhi, what was the point of Karbala if I can't compare? I compare evil. Yes, there is none exact to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. However, what was the point of reviving the message of Ashura if not when I see something that reminds me of atrocity, injustice, oppression, that I have to be like Sayyid al-Shuhada against atrocity, injustice, oppression. These are the lessons, different roles, but one goal, and that is the satisfaction of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, the Prophet of Islam, when they were young, Hassan and Hussein, it is very much known that when the Prophet would enter in the state of sujood, prostration, the young Imam al-Hassan would run up, climb on the back of the Holy Prophet, latch on like this. You had like a 5-year-old grabbing the Prophet of God and waiting. Yes, now he's going to stand up again from the sujood, and I'm going to be taken high, and that is going to be fun. At the end of this, the Prophet of Islam was approached by some of his companions, and they said to him, Ya Rasulullah, how lucky are Hassan and Hussein to have the kind of vehicle that they have, referring to the Prophet as a vehicle. How lucky are they that they have you as the vehicle of transportation on top of you? To which the Prophet said, no, how lucky am I that I have them riding on my back, emphasizing the love and nature between both of them. You had a moment where the Prophet of Islam begins to teach society, not from a lovey-dovey grandfathery to his grandchildren affection remarks, but to teach them status. The status of these individuals. He begins to say, Al-Hassan wal-Hussein, imaman, qama aw qa'ida. That he is an imam whether he is standing or sitting. Some might interpret this as, look, he just loves his grandkids. There is theology to what he says. Aqeedah, aqa'id. The Prophet does not speak out of whim and air. وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. So what does he mean here? He says, whether he is active in his role of imamah or not, he is still a proof of God upon you. Active in the role highlights what? That there can be a time in history where you have one hujjah of Allah, one main active imam, and you can have another at the same exact time. Like what? Like Harun and Musa. Musa is the active imam. Harun is following orders of the main imam. But just because he is second to his imam, i.e. Musa, doesn't mean that what he tells you is not a burden upon you, is not proof upon you. So when the Prophet says this, he is to indicate that there will come a time where you will have multiple imams in one go. We only have one imam, and he is in ghaibah, and we are so blessed to have that. Imagine you have 3 imams alive and you can access them publicly. How lucky would you be then? And the society had those imams. In fact, society had 5 of these imams. Rather, no, yeah, you had Rasulullah alive, you had Imam Ali alive, you had Sayyid Zahra alayhi salam, of course a hujjah, in the sense that whatever she says, you got to obey and follow. You had Imam Al-Hassan, you had Imam Al-Hussein, meaning, okay, so do I only follow one and ignore the rest? He's like, whether they are active or they're not, you have to obey them. Because there will come a time, it's just Imam Hassan and Hussein. Yes, Imam Al-Hussein is obedient to his brother. But if Imam Hussein says this, that hadith is sahih, accepted, you have to follow. And it's a burden upon you. It's just, there's an imam for an imam as well. He begins to teach theology. He begins to say, Rayhanata, my 2 apples of my eye, or the more appropriate term, basils of the Holy Prophet. These are very fragrant expressions and symbolism, highlighting purity, beauty, loving his grandchildren so much, establishing the bare bone minimum that the man by the name of Al-Aqra', which means the bald-headed one, which just shows you the naming Arabian mothers had. I don't know why that was popular. The bald-headed guy, he came and asked Rasulullah, I see you constantly embracing and hugging and kissing Al-Hassan wal-Hussein. What gives? I have 10 sons and I never kissed any one of them. To which Rasulullah says, you will be asked about this, that it is of your duty to be someone caring and tender to your grandchildren. Don't be this whole tough love, and in your mind that reflects you have to be as aggressive as you could. At the end of the day, these are children. And so I want to make that very clear. It is said that Rasulullah would constantly kiss Imam al-Hussein as that young baby on his holy neck. And he would embrace Imam al-Hassan on his blessed lips. And Sayyidah Zahra would say, why is that? Do you have some favoritism with respect to how you embrace one or the other? To which he said, I embrace them in the areas that will be the sources and the areas for where they will return back to Allah. One in Karbala and one through the poison. And he already begins to highlight for us that the Imam will go through and endure a great deal of pain. But that doesn't mean that in his entire life, that he goes from a baby to the moment he is a shaheed. Everything in between has to be discussed. The pages need to be opened, and it's sad that they weren't. So let's, inshallah ta'ala, try to put some effort in that regard. As you know, Imam Al-Hassan alayhi salam grew up in the house of his father, and then he moved to Kufa with his father. In Kufa, Imam Hassan gets married. The marriage of Imam Hassan here is an interesting one because it was leveraged by the enemies, Banu Umayyah specifically, and even the modern Banu Umayyah, to claim that Imam al-Mujtaba had nothing better to do than just to get married and divorced, which couldn't be further from the truth. First of all, even if a person ends up divorcing, divorce is not a haram thing, nor is it inappropriate. It is despised because of what it can do to some families, especially if there are kids involved, but it doesn't decrease of a person's status in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. So yes, there were moments where the Imam alayhi salam, it's not that he makes mistakes in this context, it's that he shows you that even I am ma'soom. If I see that there isn't a prioritization of God in a relationship, as I might have noticed in maybe a spouse or two, then that's not a relationship that needs to be tolerated. You shouldn't compromise on your deen. That's a lesson now. Even if it means that you have to end up divorcing. Why? Because Allah is a red line. Preferences are not standards. Standards are conditions. You compromise on preferences, you don't compromise on conditions. Their relationship with Allah has to be something that is seen as a standard. Where they're from, age, factors in a reasonable sense, such as these are preferences. And the Imam makes it very clear, look, I don't mind. If at the end of the day, there's no chemistry even, these things can be worked on. But if Allah Azza wa Jal is being violated, then that's something I will be the first to say, look, Allah is my standard. If you're not going to honor that, and then be my guest and you can have out. And that could happen. But that's not a net negative. I never see why is that a negative thing. Banu Umayyah came and said that Al-Hasan tazawwaja, this is a bizarre number, 500 times. 500? So if you're going to exaggerate and lie, okay, fine. At least be a bit more consistent with the lies. What do you mean 500 times? Because if you do the math on 500 marriages and divorces and things of that nature, none of it even adds up. None of it makes sense. And even if you do the math on that, surprisingly, he only has literally a handful of children. If a marriage is one that is fulfilled, then clearly you would see a big progeny. If that's a person's intention, as if to say that all he cares about is relations. No, because you could see if someone cares about relations, there are symptoms to that, but not with Imam al-Mujtaba. At the very most, many of our ulama came and said that the numbers range either from 2 to 5, at the very most, in this context. But it's petty arguments. One day a man came and said, from the enemies of Ahlulbayt, that Al-Hasan had a stutter. A stutter? Like, yeah, he would stutter. These are shameful accusations. Why? Because it is to say that there are things you can change in life that make you a bad person. So what? So what? Now the reality is he didn't have a stutter. No work in history records for us he would struggle in his speech. In fact, we have the opposite. We have where Imam Ali alayhi salam says, tonight, instead of me giving the sermon in the masjid of Kufa, as Imam Ali alayhi salam would do nightly, I leave that for my son, Imam al-Hassan. When he got up to speak, he spoke very eloquently. And if anyone knows eloquence, it's the man known as Nahjul Balagha, the peak, the path of eloquence, Balagha, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. At the end of it, Imam Hassan comes down in his 20s. Imam Amir al-Mu'minin says, ذُرِّيَّةٌ بَعْضُهَا مِنْ بَعْضٍ. That how I love that my son accomplished what I would have done. How wonderful a lineage is. One is just like the other. This all lower jabs to attack the Ahlul Bayt are silly, but it shows you how oppressed Imam Hassan is. So oppressed that they called him and leveled at him many accusations and allegations. Amongst them are that he was someone who was apolitical and didn't like confrontation. Number one, is it cool to like confrontation? I don't understand why that. Do you want to like also bully people? Is that fun for you? Does that make you a better person? Confrontation against dhulm is good. But they say no, that's how he was. He could have maybe fought and he decided to hang back a bit. If you read in the Battle of Jamal, it was Imam Hassan alayhi salam who confronted the moral symbol, the main head, the leader of the adversaries, and he came. There was a situation, if you study the Battle of Jamal, you had the estranged wife of the Prophet. She would be on top of a camel, and she would then confront the Imam alayhi salam. When she confronted him, she would also be with the army, and she would be there supporting them from her big high horse, or high camel rather. Surrounding the camel were multiple rows of armored men. The tradition says these men, the only thing you can see from them is just their eyes. Everything else is metal. They would be protected. They're like a wall shielding her. So they would send people to go and try to penetrate through that force to get to her. Now the goal isn't to kill her. The goal is to bring down what appears to be the moral boost for the opposition. That if they see their leader fall, at least, that's enough to crush their morality. And so they would send forces after forces. None could get past that wall of men that are standing. Imam Ali alayhi salam sends Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. Muhammad, the hadith tells us, this is his son from another wife after the shahada of Sayyidah Zahra. Muhammad was known to be very strong. And he was so strong, so brave, so powerful in his might, mashallah, where there was a story that says that there was a man causing havoc in Medina. One of those very quick, youthful, fast, energetic people that would, you could imagine, he would pull hijabs off women and run away and no one could catch him. He would always slip and run around. Just a lunatic, pretty much, a maniac. He caught him, Muhammad, and then he decided to restrain him. How he restrained him? The tradition says he grabbed a metal pole and he tied it and bent it around him. They said that we need to let him go now. It's been hours. He held him there. They said we tried to undo it, unbend it, but it didn't work. It was too hard. It was metal. Until Muhammad came back and undid it, demonstrating his might, mashallah. So this is if you're the son of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, if you can lift the door of Khaybar, if your dad can lift Khaybar, I'm sure you can bend like metal and iron and easily. He tried to get through that wall, basically that fortress. He went in and he couldn't make it. Until Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib says, send my son Al-Hassan. Imam Hassan participated in that battle. And he goes and he manages to get through not just the first level of men, but the second and the third. And he was able to actually kill that camel, essentially, which was necessary to bring down their leader and their figurehead. She fell down from it, which ultimately destroyed the morale of the opposition, allowing for the conflict to be solved. When he did this, Imam Ali, the hadith says, looks at his son Muhammad, who had just failed in doing this, in accomplishing this. Imam Ali says the following, I know what you're thinking. You're embarrassed that when I sent you, you couldn't do it. But your brother, when he went, he did it. Let me reassure you. I sent you, and the reason you couldn't do it, I love this line, I love it very much, is because you are the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why he was able to do it is because he is the son of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And there's a difference, oh my beloved son, Ya Muhammad, from the sons of Ali to the sons of Muhammad. They're much outstanding. This was a moment that demonstrates to you that when the going gets tough, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, there's no holding him back. In fact, in the Battle of Siffin later on, Imam Ali would say, إِمْسَكُوا عَنِّي هَذَيْنَ الْغُلَامَيْنِ. Grab them, they're going way too far ahead. Imam Hassan and Hussain, they would really charge, and it would be as if you can't even see them. Imam Ali said, bring them back. I at least want to see them. It's not that I fear for them, but I just hate to see that they keep going and they're just alone. Demonstrating once again their bravery, their courage. This all is to just throw out the misconception, to disprove all of this stuff. That's one side, his bravery. That other side we saw, his generosity. There's a unique side to Imam al-Mujtaba that is hardly ever highlighted. When you go home and you say, why do you love your second Imam? It's because Rasulullah loved him. Ya akhi, he grew up after 7, man, he lived. There's more to that. What is it? And his intellectual side. It's called the Imams of Ahlulbayt, mashallah, they're the beacons of intellectuality. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan was approached by a group of Romans. Romans would ask bizarre questions. They're not going to ask you from Qur'an. They're going to ask you thought-provoking questions. They came and they were philosophers. And they said, we have a series of questions for you, O Khalifa of the Mu'mineen. Ha Shabab? Do I have your undivided attention? A series of questions. One of them is if you could demonstrate to us the 10 things God made in this world which are from weak to the strongest there ever is. From strong to stronger though, but starting with the weakest. Could you demonstrate for us the actual distance between the heavens and this earth? Could you demonstrate to us the distance between the haqq, truth, and falsehood? Could you demonstrate for us the uniqueness of how to identify, observe the following, a neutral gender, not male or female? What on earth is that, and how you identify it? Could you give us these demonstrations, and could you show us the creations of the Almighty that are in union between the scriptures, which were born without mother or father? Muawiyah said, I have no idea. Who does know then? We want to entertain. Who knows? He says, if you go to Medina, there is a scholar there. He says, but hold on, don't you claim to be Khalifatullah? He says, yeah. He's like, then okay. The guy in Medina, you think he can satisfy? He's like, yeah, go ahead. You get to Medina, and all they were given was one name, Hassan. Who is Hassan? Where is he? You know what's so funny? The funny thing is, the name, his name is, what does it even mean? Good, nice, Hassan, right? Good. The hadith tells us he was the first to be named that. What does that tell you about the naming of a society? No one could have thought about the name goodness, Hassan. He was the first to be given that name. So maybe Hussain, possibly, sure. Because Hussain is deep in its etymological meaning. Its root is just Hussain. But Hassan, its root is what? Husn. Husn al-khalq. Hassan al-khalq. It's just goodness. He was the first to be named that. So when they come and they say, hey, I'm asking for Hassan, at that time in the 7th century, Arabian Peninsula, there's only one Hassan. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. So it's easy. Today, if you go to Medina, Aina Hassan, like, which billion Hassan do you want to know? They get to Medina and they meet him because there's only one and only. And they say, listen, we approached Muawiyah, we asked questions, he couldn't answer, he referred us to you. Do you think you're up for it? He's like, let's go. He said, okay, first address to us the 10 things, one is stronger than the other. He's like, in order? In order. He said, Allah Azza wa Jal created stone, and rock is hard. However, iron breaks rock. However, fire will melt iron. Water extinguishes fire. The cloud carries that water and creates it. The wind moves the cloud. The angel who controls the cosmos controls the wind. The angel of death overpowers the angel who controls the wind. Death overpowers the angel that controls the angel that controls the wind, the angel of death. And Allah overpowers death, for He is the living that does not die. They said, okay, all of that is logical. How about the distance between the heavens and the earth? One of the most profound responses ever given. It should wake you up from your sleep. He said, صيحة المظلوم بالدعاء. The call of an oppressed person in dua. Heavens and the earth become this when a person screams, Ya Allah. Why? Because every malik of the malaika heard you. Every inhabitant of the jinan, it all came together like this. Allah heard you. The cry of an oppressed person in dua is the distance between the earth and the samawat. Profound response, subhanAllah. What is the distance between truth and falsehood? And you know the answer. He says it's so lovely. He's like 4 fingers. He's like, well, how? 4 fingers is the distance between the ear and the eye. What you hear with the ear, verify with your eye. Don't let people come and tell you ghiba, namima, buhtan, tuhma. Don't let people lie like this. Let you at least say, if I didn't see it, let me not judge. Let me not assume. That could be the distance between truth and falsehood. They said, okay, how about that neutral gender thing? The thing is, if you ask us today, we don't even know what that is. What's a neutral gender? But there are certain cases where sometimes there could be anomalies and mutations in the embryonic process, and that can happen. I think the scientific term that they might refer to is hermaphrodites, possibly. Very rare case. Islam is not a perfect religion unless it addresses everything, and it did. And so it even addressed these areas. They said the way to identify that would be to hold on and wait for the development of the mammary glands. If there is no development of the mammary glands physically, then there needs to be an observance of emission. If there is no emission, then that is a neutral gender. What is their hukum shar'i? He gives exactly the details on what to do as well. Every single step, Imam gave answer after answer after answer. Come on, these are superficial, thought-provoking questions. Then you had Quranic questions that would come. The hadith says a man came to Masjid al-Nabawi and he's like, I had a question. In Surah والسماء ذات البروج واليوم الموعود وشاهد ومشهود قتل أصحاب الأخدود. He said, when Allah is swearing on these things, this man entering Masjid al-Nabawi, he wants to ask a question. What is وشاهد ومشهود? What is that? And the witnesser and that which is being witnessed. What is God referring to? So the guy who narrates the hadith says, I entered the mosque of the Prophet. In the time of Imam al-Mujtaba, the mosque of the Prophet was basically a hawza. And they had what is called halaqat, a circle of classes that could be offered. The Imam was in that halaqa session. He would teach. The man enters. He's like, I sat down with one of the scholars and I asked him at the end of his class, what is the shahid? What is the mashhud? He said, as for the shahid, it's the day of Jum'ah. As for the mashhud, it's the day of Arafah and Hajj. He's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I sat next to the second class. What's the shahid, mister? He's like, as for the shahid, it's the day of Arafah. As for the mashhud, it's the day of Eid. He's like, what is a day? How is that a witness? I don't get it. He's like, I sat next to the third class. And he says in the hadith, وَكَأَنَّ وَجْهَهُ الدِّينَارِ. His face looks like the gold dinar. An idiom expressing the radiance of this individual, and you all know who this is. I said to him, can you answer in the ayah, وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ? God is swearing by these things. وَالسَّمَاء ذَات الْبُرُوجِ وَيَوْمٍ مَوْعُودٍ شَاهِدٍ مَشْهُودٍ قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ. What's that? He says, as for the shahid, it is none other than Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah. He says, how? He's like, the Qur'an. Where? He says, the ayah. Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu, inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. O messenger, we have dispatched you as a witnesser. You are seeing. I said, well, what about the mashhud, that which is being witnessed? He says, it's the day of judgment. He's like, how? The Quran itself. Again, وَذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ مَشْهُودٌ. And it is a day that is going to be witnessed. The Prophet and the day of judgment. He said, and this is appropriate for what Allah is saying in the ayah. He's talking about a group of people who were burnt alive, basically subject to genocide. And you all have seen genocide today, unfortunately. And many of us were affected directly. And so he said, the Prophet will witness on the day of judgment how these people will go through their oppression and will go through their punishment and discipline. And on the day of judgment, it will be seen how they will go through the punishment and the capital punishment that they deserve. It matches with what's happening. He says, then I asked, who are these three individuals? They asked for the first scholar, it was Ibn Umar. Asked for the second scholar, it was Ibn Abbas. Asked for the third scholar, it is Al-Hassan ibn Ali alayhi salam. At that moment, it was quite clear and understood that the best class to attend on Quranic tafsir was Imam Hassan alayhi salam. The most profound scholar. And of course, well recognized, and this is where I think it would be fine to now wrap up, for his peace truce and peace agreement and his treaty with Muawiyah. That way we just skipped a lot of years while giving some glimpses here and there about his life. Imam Hassan alayhi salam, as you know, inherited the civil wars that his father, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, was dealing with. And of course, Imam Ali dealt with a lot of civil wars. Jamal, Siffin, Nahrawan. Siffin technically still didn't finish. It ended with what is known as the arbitration, whereby they tried to do some diplomacy. But Imam Ali was forced into it by coercion. And you all can watch the news today. When two sides are fighting, if one of the sides who happens to be the aggressor says, let's come and make terms, they have no right to say that. Why? You started the issue. We were just minding our own business. You killed our children. You bombed our schools. Now you're saying now you must make a peace treaty? Akhi, look into the mirror. Speak for yourself. We were minding our own business and you come out of nowhere, you hit us and say, now you must sign a peace treaty. What gives? But if you're an upright people, you know that Islam prioritizes the primacy of peace. Any opportunity from it, you must take it. Khalas, just take it. Muawiyah is the aggressor. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen saw that they came to terms, the two sides that were fighting, to say, let's at least try to do some diplomacy. Let's use the Qur'an to determine who's on the truth. Of course, this was a plot. This was a joke to just save face. Muawiyah saw that at this rate perpetually, Imam Ali is going to get to him and end him. So let's just bring an excuse to stop the fighting. And they said, let the Qur'an judge. This let the Qur'an judge made some of the members of the side of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib say, you know what, let's do that. Imam Ali says, وَيْحَكُمْ أَنَا الْقُرْآنَ النَّاطِقِ. Woe to you, I'm the walking, speaking Qur'an. Don't believe them. And to further emphasize their point, they took the Qur'an, imagine this, like they took the Qur'an and they placed it on a spear and they raised it. And they raised it high and they said, let the Qur'an judge. This would come and create the Khawarij. Khariji, kharaja, maraqa, an ad-din. They emerged and said, let's do that. So they hated both Imam Ali and Muawiyah. They emerged from Muawiyah's side and some from Imam Ali's side. Ibn Muljam was part of this, by the way. Shimur ibn Dhul-Jawshan was part of this, by the way. They emerged from this. Imam Hassan inherits this. He inherits this headache. After Imam Ali alayhi salam was a shaheed, Imam Hassan rises and then he says, O man and womankind, Ya ayyuhan nas, not Ya ayyuhal mu'minun. He says, oh man and woman, because Imam Ali is an imam for all of people. All of people loved him. He says, today we lost a man. Jibreel would fight to his right, Mikael to his left. However, we will continue what he died doing. Proceed with me. He took whatever forces that were willing to fight. Many of them were fatigued. Many of them were tired. But this is your imam telling you, do the following. As they were going, they were about 12,000 soldiers. Imam al-Hassan divided his soldiers by about 3,000 each. So you had, for example, 3,000 ahead. You had 3,000 in the middle, and you had 2,000 behind. And Imam al-Hassan was at the dead center middle. Ahead of him was his cousin, Ubaydullah ibn al-Abbas, who was leading that group of number of men. Muawiyah sent him money to bribe him. Stop. Don't make the same mistake his dad did. It's not worth it. Here's a lot of money, take this. Not only did Ubaydullah ibn al-Abbas take his soldiers and stop fighting, he took them to Muawiyah's side. They joined his side. The people behind Imam al-Hassan, from the back, the 2,000, he sent them a letter, Muawiyah, saying that al-Hassan and I have decided to give up fighting and he gave me allegiance. He lied, basically. He lied and he forged a signature, Al-Hassan ibn Ali. And they're like, okay, he doesn't want to fight anymore. Not believing that their imam was someone dedicated to his mission. And the Imam of Ahlulbayt doesn't hesitate. He says, go, he's not going to be changing his mind. And the rest were all paid off. He was left with just a few number of individuals. It came to the point that Imam al-Hassan saw that he was abandoned pretty much, and there were just a few members that were still with him. As Imam al-Hassan is motivating them, come and fight, come proceed. They said, they are much more in numbers, we're just little. He says, Allah will help us if I am with you. One of them came and took a knife and stabbed the thigh of Imam al-Hassan, one of those who was part of his army initially. And the Imam was injured. They took him down from the horse. They secluded him in a cave and they stood guard. Some of the handful, 15 that stayed behind. One of those was Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. He was there watching guard until he couldn't do anything else. Some people think as soon as Imam Hassan became Imam, that he immediately said, let's make a peace agreement. La. And Imam of Ahlulbayt, nothing can confront them. You could just about kill an Imam after you make them thirsty for like 3 days, kill their family, physically hurt them. You could just about kill them, like as you saw in Karbala. But if he has some support, that's mashallah enough. He came to a point where Muawiyah said to him with a letter that let's just stop this. You are clearly outnumbered. Let's make terms and I'm willing to accept your terms. When he got that condition, the wisest individual in any moment of making a peace agreement, and it's all very relevant today, is the one who sets the terms. Not the one who says, let's make an agreement and I set the terms. you see who gets the ability to say we'll stop conflict based on the terms of the following. And Imam Hassan said, oh, in that case, that's what I want. Otherwise, why do I want to fight you? So that I can bring these terms. If I can get that without fighting you, then I'll do it. The first term was that you will stop changing the sunnah. Salat al-Jum'ah was done on Fridays. Muawiyah would do it on Thursdays. Why? You just like chilling. I just feel like that. Stop doing the la'na on Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. That was a term in of itself. On the manabir, whenever they would pray, they would begin the prayer with a curse on Imam Ali. Stop doing that. If Imam Hassan didn't do this, till today, by the way, people do la'na on Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. Did you know that? Look at his contribution, how it's had ripples of effects till today. Stop changing the sunnah of Rasulullah. Stop killing the sahaba of Rasulullah. If you die, khilafah comes to me. Khilafah is political leadership. He's still khalifa in the eyes of Allah. But political leadership comes to me. If I am dead and you are alive, then khilafah goes to my brother Imam Hussain alayhi salam. This term allowed the Shia to breathe for the next 9 years, because this would be the 41st year of Hijrah, and Imam Hassan was shaheed on the 50th. For the next 9 years, there wasn't a single killing of Shia. You look at the Shia Muawiyah killed, Hijr bin Adi al-Kindi, it was killed before the peace treaty. You look at Malik al-Ashtar, wasn't he killed by Muawiyah? We look at the son of Abu Bakr, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. These are all upright Shia. They were all killed before the peace treaty. For the next 9 years, until the 50th year after Hijrah, rather until near the 60th year after Hijrah, because Imam al-Hassan assumes Khilafah on the 50th, rather. 50th year, on the 40th when Imam Ali dies, and then the 50th year, for the next 9, there wasn't a single Shia that was killed. He gave the Shia an ability to breathe. By the way, one of the terms was lift the sanctions on the Shia. How many of the Shia today do we see have sanctions and embargoes on them? You can't buy from them and you can't trade from them. Let them starve economically. The Ahlulbayt say that one of the biggest sins is to deprive people of basic economics. This just shows you who has the haqq. Ahlulbayt, their stories are not just Islam 101 Sunday school class. And that's it, move on. That's it, little kid stuff. It's real world application. The biggest crime is to deprive innocent people of basic inalienable rights like food, like water, and like access to education and medical care. He says, lift the sanctions on the Shia. Lift them. This embargo Muawiyah placed, none can buy and trade and sell from them. He says the worst of the terms is this one. This is the heaviest one. Of all the terms, stop killing the Shia. The thing is, kill us, we are shuhada. As a wise man once said, if we are killed, we are victorious. And if we are victorious, we are victorious. Khalasna. Why are we so sad about that? Martyrdom is a beautiful thing for us. Okay. If you change the sunnah, then your sunnah will never beat the sunnah of Rasulullah. But the heaviest one was putting sanctions on the Shia, on the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Hassan did this, lifting what would be the most intense period on the lives of the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Had it not been for Imam Hassan alayhi salam, I conclude with this, we would not be here today as lovers of Ahlul Bayt. We don't understand how indebted we are to his sacrifice, and all he had to do was give up political leadership. And you know how much he was attacked for this by even some Shia. Some came to him and said, Assalamu alayka ya mudhill al-mu'mineen wal-'ayadhu billah. Peace be upon you, O the one who humiliated us. He says, why? He says, because you gave up khilafah. He says, khilafah is from Allah. I can never give that up. I gave up leadership politically. Because if that's what it took to let you breathe today, then I'm willing to do it. And Allah is always with those who sacrifice. His generosity is so much that He's even willing to sacrifice and give away for the ummah political leadership. And none can do that unless you're someone who is known for being Kareem Ahlul Bayt. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us like Imam al-Mujtaba, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us His ziyarah in the dunya, to grant us His shafa'ah in the akhirah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lift all oppression upon the lovers of Imam al-Mujtaba in the dunya, to heal those who are sick, those who are injured, to grant rahmah upon those who have left us from the shuhada and from the ulama. We ask you, Ya Allah, to bring about a change in this ummah, so that inshaAllah ta'ala it is one where we are all more conscious of the haqq of Ahlul Bayt. For inshallah ta'ala, it is not worth loving Ahlul Bayt if you do not follow the Ahlul Bayt as well. I say that inshallah. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.